Welcome to AI Strategy for CMOs. Hey, everybody. Welcome to AI Strategy for CMOs. That's such an anticlimactic intro. We're going to be working on that. But this is a new weekly series that actually discusses the problems that face ad techies, marketing executives, and creative agencies around the world, and how artificial intelligence is going to solve them. I'm going to be your host and your MC, G.S. Jackson, Executive Director of Innovation and Enablement for Qualex Consulting Services. But you know what? I'm not alone. I am here with three amazing other hosts. Vance Reavie, CEO and founder of JunctionAI. And what is JunctionAI? JunctionAI is an artificial intelligence platform designed to help marketers predict the images, video, and text of successful Google ads, social posts, and web promotions before launching. I like to call Vance, basically Vance is the algorithm man. Welcome to the show, Vance.
Hey, thanks, Gary. Great to be here today. Looking so forward to our guest and our discussion today about AI and the millennial generation. Going to be fun.
It's going to be great. Go ahead, Vance.
Yeah, no, it's just a bit more intro. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been in the digital space for a while now, and I write on AI and marketing. I'm absolutely passionate about the area, so I'm really looking forward to this discussion.
Awesome, Vance. And then our second host is Mike Tankel. He's a partner optimist at To Be Continued LLC. Mike led brand strategy and fandom on The Twilight, also including Skyfall, Olympus Has Fallen, Odd Life of Timothy Green, Lone Ranger, and Insidious. Not to mention, he was the brand strategist formerly of AT&T. Let's call Mike the agency man. I want to give it up and bring in Mike. Welcome to the show, Mike.
What's going on? How's everyone doing today?
Good. Welcome to Happy Thursday. Anything you want to? It's going to be a great show, Mike.
I'm always glad to be here and learn a little more and try to contribute where I can.
Awesome. And then our third and final host is Scott Taylor. You might know him from his own bombastic podcast, but he's also the co-founder for Blue Skies Ventures. Scott was also the co-founder for the internet company virtualrelocation.com and raised millions in venture funding, and the company sold to monster.com for just under 100 million. Scott is what I call our bombastic businessman. Want to bring to the stage. Welcome, Scott.
Welcome. $100 million sounds like nickels now with all the trillions. I'm just a guy trying to pay his rent right now.
Yeah, especially when they talk about COVID relief, $1.9 trillion, 100 million is only nickels.
Yeah, I thought it was a big deal for like 10 minutes, and then all of a sudden it was like, what? How much was it? Forget about it.
There's a lot of startups out there that will still think that's a pretty good amount, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I'm very blessed. I'm happy to be here with you guys and to talk to our special guest and get into it. So it's fun to be back.
Yeah, and I'm very excited about this as well because one of the topics that, I guess we kind of didn't think about, but it is so in our face, is how different generations are dealing with artificial intelligence. I mean, we're talking about it from our own personal experience and growing up from the 90s, early 2000s .com boom and bust, and then we kind of went through that. But I was always fascinated to find out, what are the other generations thinking of? How do they perceive how artificial intelligence is going to help them or hurt them? I mean, Vance, we were talking about this before. Had you thought about that when you started working with JunctionAI, thinking about targeting these different demographics and how they work?
I wasn't really, but the more I've looked into it and the more I've engaged with different groups of people of different generations, you do see that there's a difference in how we've learned to accept the information that we're giving up, or the data we're giving up, and our comfortable level, our level of comfort with giving up that data, and then what we expect to get back from that, whether it makes our lives easier, faster to get the information we need, or less, steps to go through in an engagement when it's support. So it really got me thinking about that, and prior to the show, obviously doing some research on the challenges of how does this affect the younger generations that are seeing automation happening, and where they sit in that? How do they enter the workforce? How do they move up to senior roles? And what's that path look like these days? It's very different.
Yeah, and so with no further ado, I wanted to bring to the kind of our stage Marissa Robinson, who I've been working with for Tech Talent South. I've been working with her for some of for our teaching around data science, artificial intelligence. She works for Bold Idea, which is an amazing program for children to learn how to code. She's a coder herself. She does data science. She teaches data science. She's a track and field star. She's a competitive, kick your butt in cheerleading, even if your team doesn't do well. She's in everything. Welcome to the show, Marissa.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited. I think we'll have a great time. This is a great conversation topic, and I'm excited to give my point of view, especially being a millennial. And I am on the younger side of the millennials. So I am pretty close to Gen Z. I'm not a Gen Z, but I'm close enough that I feel like I can understand their point of view as well. So I'm excited to add that little.
Let's go ahead. I think we're all about to ask the same question. Go ahead, Scott. What are you going to say?
About X, Y, Z.
Yes. Yeah, explain that. Like, today, tomorrow starts Chinese New Year and it's an ox. So I get that. How do we break out Gen Z, millennials? What is that? How do you know you're on the cusp?
Okay, so I know I'm on the cusp. It kind of goes back and forth on like when the year is. For some people, it's if you're like 1995 if you were born between 1995 and 1998, you're a cusp. You are at the end of the millennials and right at the top of Gen Z. But for sure, Gen Z is 2000 and up. Those are the solid. You are Gen Z, no doubt about it. If you were born in the year 2000 and up, but that 1995 through like 1998 through 2000, those are the ones that are kind of on the cusp. So we are we're the youngest of the workforce right now, basically.
Right.
So we were introduced to technology at a much younger age, because you do have millennials who are like 40s, they're having kids, they have houses, a mortgage, 3 times divorced, all that, yada, yada. But then
how'd you know I was divorced 3 times? I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
But then you've got my age group. So I was born into technology, but I also witnessed a lot of things. So we've had 2 massive financial things in my lifetime. So the crash of 2008, which I was not in the workforce, but I did witness it. And I was old enough to see how it affected my family. And then we also have 2020, and the whole year of 2020, where I am in the workforce and able to see things, and it's really directed the path that I took and why I decided to get in technology. I knew I had to get into a career that I felt like was going to be able to withstand another housing market crash, or people, like, just so many things. So I feel like my age group, we definitely have a different insight in things, and we definitely care a lot. So I think people think that young kids, we don't care. I know, especially when it comes to cybersecurity and technology, but we're aware. We're definitely aware of what's going on, and we have great insights on the topic. So we can start off from there.
I was thinking real quick as you were saying that, and knowing how much resistance there can be towards AI as it relates to marketing, having some conversations with other investors and with agencies. And I started thinking, why would there be any resistance from, these younger generations, millennials or X, Y, or Z or whatever. But the millennials, it just struck me as you guys have been through a little bit of trauma. And so maybe, Vance, the reason that some of these people that are millennials that are in those leadership positions, it isn't so much about not trusting the technology, but there's more of a fear of being replaced and that uncertainty that they've experienced over the last, 5, 6, 7 years. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's actually spot on, because just as Marissa was taking us through sort of the generational divides there and some of the difference in that, if we look at that early 2000 and onward period, we're talking about a lot of intelligent automation starting to happen. The digital era took over, and it really changed what people were doing, or at least how they entered the market. It was a change from doing, and probably low value tasks, but you learned on that and you built your way up through the levels versus, now you have to be a thinker and entering into thinking roles, but it's harder to get into those roles because unless you've got the experience, unless you can show a portfolio or some job history in that, how do you get into that? And how do you move up the chain or take those senior roles on without that? And that's a big challenge. I mean, this intelligence automation changed everything and wiped out a lot of the entry-level jobs, really.
No, well, let's challenge a few things. Let's make it interesting, because I think, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, we've all been through some stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
And we've all been through technological innovation. Some of us have had to adapt to it. Some of us were born into it. But I think there's something to be said about recency of events and prioritizations in one's life. And obviously, age can have an impact on what you prioritize in your life. But it's still we've got to look at it in a way that, how does AI impact that? And what is our comfort with AI? What is our comfort with data? What is our comfort with being fed information that we didn't realize we even shared?
Yeah. I think it's a good one, Mike. And I mean, one thing we talk about there is that accessibility. I mean, data is very accessible, and everybody now knows that data is available. We can capture data so easily, be it from a web chat, whatever it is. Like, there's so many ways to capture data. It's just part of everybody's DNA and part of everybody's business now. But that's a difference, and that's a change too.
And data is the cost. Data is what we pay for all these freemium experiences.
Exactly. Yep. And even the retargeting ads, or the personalization, that's based on our data. We're giving that up in order to have what we're hoping is a better experience, something that's more relevant to me, something I actually care about seeing on my Facebook timeline or whatever it is, right? We want it to be right, but we have to give up our data, and that's part of the bargain. But I'm not sure every generation feels the same about that bargain.
Yeah.
So your generation still uses Facebook?
Yeah, exactly.
You're right. Hey, one thing I do want to bring up, and I just thought of this as you were talking about this, is that, we grew up with, Terminator, Skynet, the end of the world, AI. Marissa, how old were you when you, and again, I'm not poking on you or, making fun of you. How old were you when you first saw Terminator? Or did you ever see it?
When I first saw Terminator, I definitely was young. And actually it's really funny because now I think there's a new Terminator that's actually on Netflix. And that's kind of what comes to my mind first. And then I'm like, oh no, you're probably talking about the older one.
Right. But you've never been afraid of AI. You never thought of robots coming out to kill us, correct?
No, I've never, ever been afraid. And I think that there's some kind of misconception that we're afraid that AI is going to fully take over our jobs in the workplace. But I would say that's really not a fear of mine. I think one thing that I've learned is the most important skill, and once you're comfortable with it, you'll be comfortable with AI, and it's adaptability. And really, that's nothing new. Companies have been trying to become more efficient and for centuries, and now we're just doing it with more advanced technology. I mean, if we weren't constantly adapting, we would still have secretaries like using typewriters to get messages across. And so, yeah, those changes have always been happening. So I don't understand why people are just so scared. But back to the typewriters, like what happened to them? We don't have secretaries who are specifically hired to be on a typewriter now. We now can honestly just use virtual assistants. But what did those people do? They pivoted. You got to pivot to something else. You have to stay with the trends. You either keep going or you get left behind. And that is one thing that does not scare me. And I don't think that scares younger people at all. But we're not scared. It's a challenge for sure. So you just have to learn to be adaptable. That's the important skill.
So Vance,
I think it's really interesting, Marissa, from that point of view. What you're saying, just that you're basically saying it's a tool and it's no big deal. It's like, whatever, it's a tool we're used to, and like any other technology tool or other, the typewriter, whatever it is, it's just a tool. And maybe we're making a big deal of this, and it shouldn't be. Maybe there is no deal to be made of this, really.
I think oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think the real question here is generational comfort with transparency.
Mm-hmm.
The older the generation, the less comfortable they are in sharing things they once considered secret.
Mm-hmm.
The younger the generation, the more comfortable they are with, their life's an open book. They grew up with social media. They're sharing things. They're used to giving information in order to get things. And I think that's really what's at stake here is the comfort in sharing information, allowing people to know a little bit more about you, because let's face it, none of us even know ourselves that well.
Oh no, I completely agree. So my mom, she refuses to get on LinkedIn. She's just like, I don't need all of my personal information out there. That is too much. And I'm just like, well, why not? I'll make good connections in the professional world. And I have absolutely no worries about it whatsoever. And even if you talk to like younger people, I have a cousin who's 11 who he's very much on TikTok. And so when there was lots of talk about data breaches with TikTok, possibly our information going over to China, being misused, things like that, his response was, what do I care? What are they gonna take? What data are they gonna take? I'm 11 years old, like I don't care. And then if you talk to current college students, they're like, what are they gonna do? Pay my student loans? Like they can take it. They're literally like, they have no concerns because they don't. I think one thing that I am noticing is younger generations don't see what the value is of their data being stolen. For them, it's just like, okay, so my favorite Netflix shows, and you know that I love to order Uber Eats every single Friday. What are you gonna do with that? And that's kind of where I think that's where they go. That's where their mind goes with that. But then older generations, my mom's like so concerned. She's like, no one needs to know where I'm working. No one needs to know what I'm doing. And when I first got on Facebook when I was in middle school, I had to beg and plead my mom, and she was always just like, never post your location, like never post like anything to really give any insights on like where I am or like where I go to school. And I followed those rules until I got out of the house. And then now it's like, you'll see where I went to college. If you went on my Instagram, you'll see that I'm out here in the mountains skiing this weekend. And I'm just like, and I've had no concerns, but I do still think it is important that we are talking about the cybersecurity situation of AI. So yes, it may seem like pointless data points that are being taken in that they're not that valuable individually, but altogether those can be very powerful. So that is a conversation that is starting to happen because one of the traits that I love most about millennials is that we are asking questions. I really feel like older generations, if you told them to do something, they would do it. It was, you go to college, you get a job. Okay, yes, I will go to college, I will get this job. And now you've got younger generations, especially Gen Z, is just like, okay, I go to college. Why? Why do I need to go to college if the information is online for free? And then you have me in the workforce, and I hear 40-hour work week, 50-hour, 60-hour. Why? Why do you need me to be online for 10 hours a day when I really can get the work done in 6? We're asking questions and we are changing the workforce incredibly. That's why you see more work from home. That's why you see unlimited PTO. My company, we bring in a chef when we were back in office before COVID for lunch. Our generation is asking why, and it's changing a lot of things. And I do think it stems from the technology that we were introduced so early on. We're able to pick up super quickly on things. No one trained me how to use Snapchat. No one trained me how to use Instagram. No one trained me how to use TikTok. I got the app, I downloaded it, messed around a few minutes, got it, good. We pick up, we're very adaptable, and we have a lot of information that was given to us very early on. So we know a lot of things, and we're asking a lot of questions.
That's funny you mentioned that adaptability again. I was chatting with one of my teammates in our company, and you were talking about the whole pandemic situation and how, there's so much change management that some people assumed was needed to move to this, remote workplace and using Zoom or whatever for work. But, talk to a younger generation and they're like, we were already doing that. It's so irrelevant. Mm-hmm. It's really, the 50 or 55 and older that what's Zoom and how does it work? And wow, we're going to need these massive change management plans. And then, here we just go and flip the switch and the majority of people are just totally fine with it, except for maybe certain groups and certain generations. But you brought up another thing a little bit earlier in that I wanted to jump on there. And, we see a big difference in our, the people we work with at agencies and brand marketing and, the younger generations, the millennials and the Gen Zs, they do ask why about the data insights that the AI delivers. And we don't, it's really piercing. They want to know why the AI came up with this. How did the AI find this? It's not just we're going to take these insights or this data, these analytics you're providing and blindly apply them or believe in them. They're piercing through and want to go like, how come it came up with this? Where was the base information? Why is this sensible for me to apply or think about? it is really a different way of looking at it. And we don't hear that necessarily from other groups.
Is that a distrust, Vance? So like, is that part of what may hold them up? Because it's like, here, imagine what you will in this black box. We just came up with this answer and trust me. And they're like, well, what's the algorithm? What are you using? And they're not programmers, so they don't necessarily understand like the math. Do you think that there's some hesitation on them thinking that, these guys are just trying to come up with some sort of pet rock with AI, that the information is arbitrary. They're trying to make it seem really logical, but maybe it's not. So you think that's possible?
Make sure you explain pet rock, by the way, before you go. Go ahead.
I think there's something in that, but I think, some of the studies and a lot of the studies show this is our most educated generations, of course, ever. And the change of job skills to being more thinking as opposed to, manual doing or just follow, do what the software tells you. This focus on thinking about it and trying to add that higher value add, what we need to do in our jobs, comes from the thinking part. So I think they're really well primed into coming into this as thinkers and how to apply these sorts of things to get better results, as opposed to the doing of it. Or how do I generate the insights, or how do I do data queries, or whatever it is like that. It's really about thinking about the output and how they can apply it. So to me, I'm very positive and optimistic about that approach to it. I'm glad that they want to think about it. I'm glad there's those piercing questions as to why did the AI return these results?
Yeah.
So, well, Vance, I was going to ask Vance, if the millennial generation is more comfortable with data, they're more comfortable with technology, they're in the job looking for better ways to do things, to be more efficient, should you be targeting companies that have millennials in decision-making roles?
Well, you know what, I was going to ask Marissa, an angle on that. Is the senior manager being, of an older generation, are they actually blocking us at getting this transformation to go faster? To have the digital, natives, the millennials and the Gen Zs in those senior roles faster, or knocking those barriers down a bit quicker, so we're not having, so much pressure or so much trouble pushing through on that.
I see there's still a ton of pushback in that area. So I definitely see companies understanding and seeing the value that millennials bring in, for sure. But there is a lot of pushback from the older generations who are still holding those senior level positions. So it's still extremely difficult to make it up to those decision-making positions. I think it's also just a running joke for anyone who is a fresh graduate, that they expect you to be a fresh graduate with 10 years of experience for an entry-level job. That's definitely the running joke, and it's hard. And I think we're the generation, and I know for myself, I am constantly having to prove myself, because for some reason it is that experience, that length of time that is tied to like what your worth is as an employee. But that's really not the case sometimes. I don't have to be in the industry for 20 years to have really good insight and be a good decision maker. So I think bringing that back, it is very difficult to find companies that have millennials in decision-making positions. So that is one, that's a struggle there. But as time has changed, you see the adaptation happening with companies, and we're getting closer and closer where millennials are getting in those decision-making positions, and it is changing the workforce completely.
Right.
To come back to your comment, Mike, there on, should we be targeting the firms that are owned by millennials, the brands owned by millennials? We do work with quite a few agencies and brands that are millennial, have senior people in the millennials in the senior positions, and they do react differently. Like one of the agencies we work with in Toronto called Other, his main focus, the CMO or the CEO there, is about innovation and making sure his team try new tools, learn new tools, take part in innovation, because that's part of their development. That's part of the thinking, not just the doing they have to do to make money, but the thinking they have to do. And I think there's a real openness in that generation to innovating and trying new things, because it's just changed so rapidly all the way along.
Yeah, and sometimes the walls we see in companies about their unwillingness to embrace, I hate to say it, but it tends to come from the fact that they don't know how to monetize it as well as they can monetize inefficiency.
Yeah, agency-wise, for sure.
Yes.
Agency-wise, for sure. And it reminded me of when I started my internet company. I'm trying to take advertisers that were okay with print and radio and TV and all the mysteries of who's actually watching my ad or seeing my ad or listening to my ad. You couldn't really tell for sure. You had, measurement companies like Nielsen and stuff, and you knew that half the Vanity Fairs ended up, under the George Washington somewhere, and you couldn't prove that they were there or they weren't there. But then the internet comes along and says, I'll actually be able to show you who this person is, right? All these things, and now we've got AI that we can introduce into these, these marketing campaigns where we're saying, before you spend any money, real money online, we'll test this, we'll simulate this. And this is, I think, what Vance is doing at JunctionAI. And that's what's interesting to me. It's like, how do you make an argument not to test before you actually started spending real dollars? Do you think people are going to start getting frustrated and not have the tolerance to burn all that cash? And I would open this up to, the millennial and to you, Vance.
But here's the real problem. Agencies don't sell ideas. They don't sell success. They sell man hours.
Yeah, and it's the media buy, and that's why agencies are all sideways.
The business model, and the business model incents the wrong behavior.
Absolutely,
that's the problem.
Yeah, and I mean, the difference now between marketers, generation ago marketers today, the performance marketers out there, the performance stats and metrics are right there about how well they did, what they achieved, what ROI they achieved. They're being judged every day, every moment, because those dashboards are sitting there flicking numbers constantly. So their management are seeing those numbers, judging on those numbers. Their career prospects are based on those numbers. So there's a real tight connection between that data being pushed out and what they do in their jobs and their success in their jobs.
So when do the agencies really put the squeeze on the media buyers to be more efficient?
Well, yeah, I mean, not just the media buyers, but the creative too.
Sure.
And all too often it's been reactive. It's after the fact. Then we analyze, we get all the reports and we've done all the testing, the live experimentation, discovery for whatever weeks and months, and we start looking at the stats then, a little bit along the way, but we start looking at the stats then, and we make some great judgments about, wow, this was effective and this wasn't, or this person didn't do their job very well, and we churn and burn them, or we give them a performance plan to get better, whatever it is. But we've got this tool and these great thinkers. We've got this capability called AI. We could be proactive. We could be pre-testing. We could be using these data and this great thinking capability to analyze ahead of time to get better direction. That's where we're going to make the ROI. We're cutting back that discovery time. We're cutting back the underperforming spend or the waste or the learning time. And digital natives, they have no problem with that. They understand that.
I wanted to bring up a really important question, to bring Marissa into this conversation as well. So we're holding on to the older generation is holding on to the reins really tight to make sure the senior positions, maybe not consciously, maybe it's unconsciously, who knows. But is that also, would you think that holding on to the reins is also another reason why they're afraid of embracing innovation, to let go of the steering wheel, let it drive itself? Do you think that has a lot to do with what's going on with not using innovation or AI and not using millennials? Because millennials will just I'm sorry, I'm stereotyping, Gen Zs, all of them, but the younger generation just uses it. Older generation is, is it, do we make this work? What is your take on this?
Honestly, I think it's just really confusing for the older generations because of the way that they were raised, So back in the day, they were told if they learned something, if they studied this field, they could get a job in that field and work in that field until they want to retire. And that was kind of the expectation. They really don't have to continue learning that much after you got the primary education. You just did your job. You hear so many people at the same company for 30 years, longer. And that's how they were raised. That is what they taught. That was their truth. And that is not the case for the younger generations at all. One, you've got people not even using the degrees that they got in college.
Don't remind me.
Yeah, me too.
But we're definitely aware that we're a generation who we're not going to stay at a company 30 years if it's not equal. I don't love the job. We're going to move. We're going to go to a different company and we're not afraid of it. That's definitely for sure. But those senior, I think what you see from the older generations is what their truth that they knew is kind of getting fuzzy and rocky, and it's weird. So you've got these younger kids coming who, one, know all these different things, and they're suggesting things to change your job completely. And you're just like, who is this? And also the respect your elders thing. That is what the older generation was taught. In me, I don't like that saying at all. I'm like, you will have my respect until you lose it, of
Right.
any age. It has literally nothing to do with your age at all. But the older
Right.
generation is respect your older elders. Don't talk unless spoken to. Like, understand your level. Like, if you are low and I am here, and I don't see that. Like, we are
Blasphemy. I
eye to
can't listen
eye.
to it. This is blasphemy.
I think you said something really, really important that digs in a lot deeper. Is the older generations were taught that you go to a job for money and stability. The younger generations are taught you build a career for happiness.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good
And there's
point.
a big, big difference there
Big
as to what makes us
difference.
happy versus what pays the bills. Ideally, they're in alignment, but which do you focus on? And for years we were taught you take the money and you shut up and you deal with it and go with it. But now we want to balance in our lives. We want happiness, and we know how to measure that. We're comfortable with ourselves to understand what makes us happy and what drives us.
Mhm.
I think we have a huge focus on mental health in our generation as well. I think especially if you think about some of the major banks that people would go to that would just kill the new hires, 80-hour work weeks, but it was known, like everyone knew, it's a huge deal. You just work at this bank for 2 years, 3 years, and then you can go anywhere else. Like, pay your dues, basically. And then you've got the young, like my generation, and I'm like, pay my dues. Why do I need to kill myself in order for what? Like, explain what is supposed to happen here. What is this dream that I'm working up to? Is it the same as your dream? I think that's one key thing that I hear older generations speak of. Well, you're working towards being able to, get a mortgage on a house, small little house, and raise some kids, and that's kind of it. And I'm just like, that's not my dream at all. I want to be able to work in an environment where I feel like I'm being challenged daily. I'm able to meet people with different perspectives, and I'm constantly growing, but I still have the freedom to explore different areas of my life
Yeah.
as well. That is my focus. So it's kind of like a 360 all around what I want. I don't want to be killed at a job Monday through Friday, maybe all 7 days a week, and then not enjoy the life that I'm given. Because one thing that we do know is that one, these businesses, sometimes they don't even care about you at all. So if anyone's going to put you first, it has to be you.
Right.
That is what we've learned. If anyone's going to put you first, it has to be you.
Well, and if
And
you don't, no one else will.
exactly. So we are asking those questions and wondering what's happening and why are we doing the ways that we're doing. And even with the back to AI and what the concerns are all around, especially on that TikTok, because that's just like the most recent thing that hit the news. The concerns, everyone was asking questions. It's like, why are we so scared? Why are we only talking about TikTok when a lot of other social media platforms kind of do the same thing? So what's the backstory there? Are we actually just threatened by the TikTok platform? Because it's actually been incredibly powerful in getting people, especially the younger generations, talking to each other about important topics. So you had Snapchat where you're just sending pictures when you're out. You have Instagram, you're just posting about vacations and nice things and hang out with your friends. Then TikTok totally changed the game. It is very educational. You've got people making political movements. You've got people, they completely ruined one of our past president's speeches and had the turnout completely washed out. This platform was extremely powerful. And then you had it being attacked in the media by older generations. And what we did was we weren't just like, oh, okay, TikTok's bad. We're like, no, like, why are you saying what you're saying, and do you have any proof to back it up? And what is your technical experience to be making these claims? That is what we do. You can't just tell us something and expect us to just take it. No, I'm going to look into it. And I think that comes with being raised in technology. So when you download an app, you get all these different things that they may want to send you. So I know, like, my mom, she doesn't know to uncheck, where usually they say, to receive promotional emails and so they can keep contacting you. I know in my head, I automatically uncheck. I don't want to hear from you again after I've done this. But those are just the little things that we are trained on. So we're not afraid of technology at all. We're not afraid of AI, but we're definitely still going to ask questions about it. And that's just that's a major difference for sure.
It just comes through and through again and again with you. It's just like, it's a tool, and it's not about the tool. It's actually about what you're doing with the tool. Like you said, learning from, TikTok being a great way to connect with people and learn and educate and rally, and that. No one in that generation is questioning the how to use the tool, whether the tool's valid, those sorts of things. It's all about, actually, it is a tool. You can take those skills from job to job of how you use these tools. It's not about, being stuck in that one track or whatever it is. And AI is just like that. It is a tool. It allows us to do certain things, and we carry those skills with us to every organization or job we're going to go after. And it's not about, judging the tool itself. It's about how you can use it and apply it and what you gain from it.
But isn't the real hypocrisy here that we're challenging information that we make public that is being used, to feed us things?
Yeah.
Like, the people shouldn't know the things that we're saying publicly.
Yeah.
That's kind of what's crazy here.
Yeah, it does seem hypocritical.
Yeah.
So
I think for me, the most interesting side of that, again, is just that constant accessibility. It just changes how we think about it and how we need to think about it. When it's that accessible, information's not scarce anymore. It hasn't been in a long time. That changes how we treat how we are in our workplace. The older manager, information was scarce, so you hoard it and you use that over everybody else. But that's not the case anymore. It's not scarce, and it's about how you use it and what you do with it. How you engage, how you in marketing and advertising, how we're engaging, how are we using TikTok to engage people in new ways? Instead of worrying about the tool and those, the technical aspects and who owns it and where it is, it's like, how are we getting the best out of it?
Right.
Well, the real simple thing is, if it's accessible, you need to be accountable.
Yeah.
Yep. Agreed. Hey, so I have one final question for Marissa before we wrap this up. And this is, so imagine it is 2041. 2041. What is the future going to look like to you? How many jobs do you think well, I better not say that because I don't want you to get in trouble with any employment that you currently have. But what is your vision of the future projecting forward? 2041.
Okay, so 2041, that's 20
no pressure,
years
by
away.
the way.
No worries. 20 years away, which, that's really not that far away. I would hope by then we see a lot of advancements in the way that we are educating. I think that's what needs a lot of change, but that's what a lot of change is happening, because as the workforce is changing, we also need to change the way we're raising our students to get into the workforce. So we're going to see a lot of changes in education. We've already seen that online education is doable. So I'm assuming we'll see more platforms that way, but everyone obviously needs a social aspect as well. So we'll need some changes there. I definitely imagine with AI and particularly, we'll definitely see some jobs getting replaced. But what people will do is just...
Yeah, but they won't be necessary jobs, do you think?
Right. No, they won't be necessary jobs, but I think we'll see people pivoting. We'll also see, especially when it comes to, one thing that I would love to see, especially when it comes to healthcare, we didn't learn anything from COVID, is that we are behind and we need to catch up, and that we can really use technology in the healthcare workspace a lot, and being able to be proactive and reactive both. So I think we're going to start seeing in every single work field, no matter what you're in, marketing, you want to be a dentist, you want to be a doctor, nurse, everyone's going to need some type of technical base. Everyone to understand what's actually going on. Everyone. I even tell people now, if you haven't gone to college yet and you're looking at college, at least get a minor in computer science at the bare minimum, so you can understand what's happening and how the world is changing, because that is going to start being the entry level requirement.
Spot on. Good one.
It's going to be like the new English as the main language. You will have to take computer science as
100%.
Right.
100%.
Pythagorean theorem. We don't need no stinking Pythagorean theorem.
We don't.
I do think one more thing, this is just me projecting into the future, but I feel like fast food jobs are going to go away as well. Like that was one of my first jobs when I got out of college, and I know that it's a lot of people do it. I think that will be our first, this is just me, but I feel like that'll be our first, like, acceptance of AI, robots doing our, flipping our burgers.
Yeah. Why would you need a person,
Right.
listening to,
Right.
Right.
No, I
When the
100%.
robots become cheaper than the humans, it'll happen.
Right.
I actually think that's one thing I'm actually really passionate about, because my very first job was at Taco Cabana.
Right.
And so I was in the fast
Good
food
tacos,
industry.
by the way. Good tacos. Right. Go ahead.
But one of the reasons why I'm heavily involved in teaching kids how to code with Bold Idea as young as 4th grade is because the future that I see is your first job when you're 16 and eligible to start working. Your first job does not have to be working behind a counter for minimum wage. It just doesn't. You could be designing websites. You could, especially if we're working from home, the possibilities are endless for our younger generations. It doesn't have to be that you're 16, so you have to work minimum wage. And then it just is, it doesn't work anymore, because back in the day, you could work minimum wage and still pay for your way through college. That's impossible right now. It's not possible. People are realizing, even younger, that they need to make more money fast. So we need our youngest students getting into the workforce earlier, because it's like you said, it's what we need. The entry level positions, we just need people at more senior level positions when they're ready to get into the workforce full time. So what does that mean? We need to have them working in those type of jobs and those type of roles earlier. So why put them through the fast food industry when we can put them through web design, when we can put them through app building? So, okay, if we're going to require that, if we're going to require you to jump in at senior level, then we need to get them started earlier.
Right.
There's no barriers for them on those jobs either. I mean, those are high value add. There are no barriers to getting into that. I mean, anybody can get hosting for dirt cheap these days and build their own website and start learning to code or become an influencer or whatever it is. But the barrier is so low now that you're spot on. That is part of that experience track that we should be valuing.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I have, and I know we need to go because we need to wrap this up, but I do have one little experimental question for you, Marissa, just to kind of put that. Have you ever been in a situation where you didn't have your phone, and how long did that last, and how did you feel? Like not having a digital, like you couldn't Google, you couldn't get on a app. Was it when you first went to Vail, or like have you been in a situation like a couple of days? How does that feel?
No, I've been in situations without my phone, and it is a little bit difficult. I do remember like young ages when we would print off MapQuest directions to get somewhere. But I say I'm definitely directionally challenged. I can't follow a map that well. And even in my own city, I still like GPS where I'm going to go to a place I go all the time. So yeah, I'm definitely tied to some certain aspects, but I can get around. I know how to be resourceful. Like typically what I would do is, find someone and ask them for their phone and use that. And I don't typically find myself in situations where I'm absolutely alone, but I like to prepare. I mean, like even things like in my car, I have a battery charger that will be able to charge my car by myself if I need to. And in my car, you can contact the authorities or contact the dealership to come and get you. So I feel like I'm very rarely in situations where I'm lost and alone and there's no technology to also help me out.
Right.
Mike can't say that. I can tell you that much.
Right. Well, hey, this is not over yet. I mean, the show right now for the streaming is over, but we are going to be going over to Clubhouse next. So we'll be doing a live Clubhouse audience after show that will be starting up at 2 p.m. Pacific time, which would be 5 p.m. Eastern time if you're on the New York side. So feel free if you don't have a Clubhouse, let us know. If you don't know what Clubhouse is, Google it first. Then maybe you want to join in. But that'll be we'll be all joining there, having an audience discussion. Marissa, I just wanted to say thank you. I know we basically stopped you from having your vacation.
Oh no, totally fine.
Yeah, and hopefully now you've been skiing all day long. Now you can take a nap. No, you can't. You're gonna be joining us afterwards, and then you can take a nap. But I did want to thank you so much for being on here. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. No, I've had a great time. I'll see you guys on the next part.
I'll see you on the next part.
Yeah,
See everybody on the other side. Thanks everybody for watching. And that is it for AI strategy for CMOs. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.